Welcome to this webinar on budgeting using Info-Explorer Writeback. My name is Nathalie, and today we will show you examples of how to use Info-Explorer Writeback to support your budget processes. We will explore the various spread methods in Info-Explorer worksets and show you how to update GL budgets in Sage 300, as well as optional tables by customer and item. This webinar assumes some knowledge of Info-Explorer to drill down, slice and dice to analyze data, and you can refer to the Orchid website and the various video resources for more general details on Info-Explorer. But first, is Info-Explorer Writeback for you? Do you need to prepare budget and rolling forecasts and save them in Sage 300? Do you do top-down budgeting and find that the data entry can be time-consuming? Do you love the idea of a powerful business intelligence tool with real-time slice and dice capability, plus integrated budgeting and forecasting, but assume this would be out of reach for a business your size? Well, what we're going to show you now is how you can use Info-Explorer Writeback to answer some of these budgeting questions. The webinar presents a budgeting scenario for a fictitious company selling office supplies. They have a few guiding principles in their budgeting cycles. They start their budgeting with top-down budget. They review previous year's actuals, assess the previous budget, and set clear objectives and assumptions. Those objectives and assumptions are communicated to the teams and documented to facilitate collaboration. They use a strategic approach for budgeting, which means that different divisions, based on their strategic role in the business, may have a different approach to budgeting. A small unit might focus on detailed cost if they're a more struggling division. A new division, which is in a different stage of the strategic contribution to their business, would have a different budgeting approach and do some budgeting targeting some very specific customers and products. And also they have a clear budget cycle. The annual budget is approved by the board and they do quarterly revisions that they want to save in their GL in Sage 300 so that they can do some more detailed budget actual analysis. We will now demonstrate each key step using Info-Explorer Writeback and Sage 300. The step number 1 is where the finance manager prepares a top-down budget. We will prepare the 2021 budget, assuming that 2020 is completed. So our 2021 budget will be based on last year's actual. We will do some high-level updates where we want to increase our gross sales by 5% and decrease our admin costs. And then we're going to share this high-level budget with the divisions. As the finance manager, I'm going to start the top-down budgeting process by looking at last year's actual, seeing how good my budget was for last year, and then starting my budget for 2021 by copying the actuals from 2020 into my budget for 2021 and doing some high-level data manipulation. In this example, we're going to focus on revenue and cost of sales for each of presentation, but you can have more GL account group in your cube view. I can see that in 2020, my variance percent between budget and actual is highlighted in yellow, meaning that my actuals was a little bit under my budget, 1% less for my total revenue minus cost of sales. So while it's not a big variation, it means that I haven't actually reached my budget, and I'm going to try and do a more reliable and achievable budget for 2021. I can use this view to drill down by fiscal period if I want to see the detail by month, or I can also drag the full GL account under my revenue group and see some more detailed information. I'm now ready to start my top-down 2021 budget. To do this using Info-Explorer Writeback, I need a Writeback license, which enables that Worksets tab in Info-Explorer. I'm going to start with a view that just shows 2020, 2021, my revenue and my cost of sales. On that budget entry view in Info-Explorer, I'm going to use the Worksets tab. and create a new work set. And a new work set is essentially like a new sheet in a spreadsheet where I'm going to be able to write some data that will be saved away in the cube, and I can manipulate them in the cube until I'm ready to push them to Sage 300. I'm going to rename this work set Top-Down 2021. And I want to set my budget 1 for 2021 based on my actuals for 2020. First, I'm going to select 2020 here. So when I set my total for 2021 budget, I'm going to spread it across the various GL accounts in the various fiscal periods proportionally to how it was in 2020 for my actuals. So I'm going to choose fiscal year 2020. For version, I'm going to choose actual, and related to my actual version, I'm going to choose my fiscal designator A, which is what Sage 300 requires in the GL for actual. So I've selected my proportional spread method, and now I can set the total for budget 1 2021 to be the same amount as it was for my actual 2020. So I'll just copy this. Info-Explorer will spread this value to budget set 1 according to actual values. I'm going to drag the account, the detail account, so that I can see a bit more detail as to what's happened with my revenue. And I can see that for all my GL accounts, my actual and my budget one have been set to exactly the same value without having to do an import export. If I look at my detail by fiscal period, and I can see that my spread for all my accounts by quarter, and if I expand a particular month, you can see that my budget for 2021 is the same as my actual for 2020. You can see that under the budget, the numbers have been highlighted in pink, and this is based on our style configuration in the cube. I'll just show you that quickly. We have created a work set style where the background is pink, and I've set that for work set, cells that have amended work set data will show in a different background color, so I can quickly see which data have been entered in the cube and not yet updated in Sage 300. So now I have my high level budget for 2021 based on 2020 actuals. We have a very aggressive marketing campaign for 2021, and we have some new products. So overall, we want our total sales to increase by 5%. So to do this, I can update my total revenue in my total revenue budget in Info-Explorer using a different spread method. And I'm going to use a percentage increase of 5%. So all I need to do is find my total revenue for 2021 budget and type 5. What this will do is calculate 5% of all the underlying values. So 5% for each GL account, each month, each division for sales. Now, at the same time, I might want to decrease my costs by 1%. So I'm going to do -1. So this has changed our total cost from just over 11 million to 10,097,000. So my grand total has now increased as well. We can see which figures have been updated because they're all highlighted. Then we can see it's changed for every month. I can expand on all the quarters and I can see it's changed for every month. every account. At this point, as the top-down financial manager, I think this is my first draft of budget. So I'm going to write this back to Sage 300. Clicking Write Back. So I'm doing 2021. I'm writing it to budget set 1 in the GL. And yes, I want to update. So while this is happening, I can see in the top right that's going on. It's updated all the rows, inserted the budget rows as required, and I can go in Sage 300 to check my GL budget. Log on to Sage 300, look at my budget maintenance in the general ledger, and for example, let's look at the sales account 4,000. I can check that all the budget amounts entered as a negative as a credit as per standard accounting and standard Sage 300 practices. I've got my budget for every month and it matches the total that I have in Info-Explorer. I have also entered some notes using Orchid notes against my GL maintenance budget with my assumptions for 2021. Increasing the sales by 5% and increasing the cost of goods sold by 1%, only less than my sales. We've seen how the finance manager can quickly prepare a top-down budget based on last year's actual, do some high-level adjustment to sales and the costs, update Sage 300, and then be in a position to share with all the different divisions their starting budget for next year. Next step, each division will update their own budgets based on their strategic role in the business. First division will need to reduce their costs because they're towards the end of their product life cycle. So the question mark division will need to identify why products lag, and they will need to keep the costs low. In particular, their office supplies and their subscriptions. So we'll have a look at how to use different spread methods in Info-Explorer Writeback to achieve this as efficiently as possible. So our question mark division that is getting towards the end of its product life cycle, we need to identify which products are particularly struggling and which ones are going to be reducing more than average. And then we also focus on reducing costs and other expenses. So to do this on our work set, when we're looking at Division 100, we're going to create a new work set and rename it Division 100 FY21. In our revenue, we know that that division has had difficulty, so they will probably get to about half of their forecast budget for this year. So to do that, I could change it by percent, or I'm just going to do round numbers in this particular example. So I'm going to set the total to 24,000 for my Eastern Division budget set 1. And I can see it's reduced every month in there. Now I could do it differently and do an even spread. So I can change that to be 24,000 spread evenly across the 12 months. And I can see that it's now doing 2,000 per month. For Division 40, the Western region, I know that there was a special contract of about $1,000 per month that isn't going to be renewed. So what I can do is choose an absolute decrease of 1,000 that is going to reduce every month. That makes up 2021 by 1,000, which should be a total of 12,000. So we've gone from 40 to 28. We've done some adjustments to some particularly slow regions in our Division 100. Let's focus now on various expenses, particularly office supplies. So we want to reduce our office supplies by about half. So we'll set the total to 120,000, which is 10,000 per month. And we're going to spread it evenly across the 12 months. So now you can see it's 10,000 per month. We've adjusted our office supplies expenses. We now want to focus on subscriptions, as the budget seems to have changed quite a lot between the first few months of the year and July to December. We've got $12,000 of subscription, and in this time of reducing cost, we want to change that to let's say 8,000 per month. What we're going to do is use another spread method. So if we look at our work set, we're going to use minimum only. So what that does is it will update the records with the smallest amount with the amount that we put here. So here we've got 6 months that have minus 12,000. It's the smallest expense for that subscription row. So if we change that to be minus 8,000, it should apply 8,000 to our 6 months that were on 12,000. So we've reduced costs for office supplies and dues and subscription. There are a couple of areas where we still need to increase the budget, adjust the budget. For example, when I look at employee benefits direct, I can see that somehow in our existing budget, some months are set to 0. These are expenses that actually happen every month. So what we need to do is apply the minimum amount, apply a certain amount to those rows that are on 0, and 0 is the maximum amount at the moment. So we're going to change the spread method to be maximum only. So keep an eye on the column with 0, and we're going to make it 15,000 for the month where the employee benefits are currently 0. So you can see that now June and August, which were on 0, are now on minus 15,000 for employee benefits. And you could apply the same method for wages and benefits indirect. So with these examples of spread method, you can see how we can use a goal-seek concept. We set a total and divide it for one row based on a particular spread method. For another row, you'd use a different spread method. So in summary, we've looked at some examples of even spread method, proportional spread method, minimum, maximum, percentage increase, absolute increase, and we see how it updates the different months and different accounts that make up the total that we're updating, and at the same time updates the grand total that we're looking at. When we're satisfied with that grand total, we can write back to Sage 300. Depending on our process and our security rights, there are 2 ways to do this. One way is the manager for that division can click write back and update Sage 300, and the financial controller who coordinates the budget can refresh their own cube with all the divisions and view the information. Or in some scenarios, this cube with the work set data saved in the cube can be sent to the finance manager, budget coordinator, who will have a look and then write back to Sage 300. In our example, we're going to do the write back immediately. So we're updating the year 2021, budget set 1, because we're still preparing our overall budget so that we can present it to the board. And we're writing back to the GL budget. It's updated those rows that were in pink. I can go in Sage 300 and check the budget for 2021. Division 100, I can see that the last 6 months are set to 8,000 as per my spreadsheet. And I can keep updating my notes if required. We've seen how we can use Info-Explorer to update budget for a division where we're focusing on reducing costs. Let's move on to the next example, which is working out a budget for a new division. So to establish the sales budget for the new division, we have established some high-level targets in our initial budget iteration. And we've spread it evenly by month because we don't have any prior sales. But to support the total sales numbers, we're working with the sales team to set up budgets by customer and item. To do that, we're using Information Manager optional tables to store a customer item, to store a budget at the customer and item level. While we won't go into the detail of how to set that up in optional tables, this is the focus of a separate video, we will show you how to use Info-Explorer Writeback to update those budget figures. As the manager of the new Industrial Chair Division, Division 500, I need to prepare my budget for 2021 without having some real actuals for the full year. I can see that in Q4 we started having some prototypes for our new chairs and started selling. So I've already had a little bit of sales, and that's what is currently in our budget for next year. But we are planning on a big marketing campaign and obviously big launch in Q1. Based on our prototype sales at the end of 2020, our target for these new products, target revenue, is to do at least $200,000 a month. To enter this, to spread this in Info-Explorer, we're going to choose the average spread method. For our total sales for 2021, we're going to enter 200,000 as a budget, and it's going to spread this equally into all the months that make up this year. So we can see a total of 600,000 per quarter spread by month into 200,000. Now, assuming I'm going to ramp this up over the course of 2021, I can do some more adjustments here. Only 300,000 in Q1, and in Q4, let's say 900. So that doesn't change the total, but maybe this is going to be 750 in Q2 and 750 in Q3. I'm going to rename this work set Division 500 FY21. For my new Industrial Chair Division, Division 500, I've set an overall budget target for my sales of 2.7 million. To support this, we're using Information Manager optional table to set up a budget, quantity, sales and cost by customer and item. This webinar does not show you the details of how to set up optional fields, optional tables to store this budget information. This is the focus of a separate video. However, we're using this cube that is available on the website to display the budget by item in the customer and to populate the budget for the year 2021. And we're going to start with our budget by item. This new division is made up of those two new items. So I know that my total sales needs to match what my overall budget is for that new division. So I'm going to set my budget sales, and the budget cost is half of that. To support this, I'm going to set an overall quantity of 2,400 units. And all this has been spread evenly. So it means that if I drill by customer, they will all have the same amounts. And if I drill down by month, they will all have the same amount. So you're going to say, well, we can't really sell 4.35 chairs. Needs to make this a round number. Can use another spread method. Let's make it, the minimum and the maximum are the same in our example. So for the minimum amount, we're going to round this to 5. So let's put 5. So now it's 60 per customer and 5 per month. So from those initial numbers, I can start filtering by customer group. For example, starting with just the retail division. We know that Mr. Ronald Black is always an early adopter, so we've got this new chair. It's very likely that he's going to buy a lot of them. So let's change this, double this to 120 and set the budget sales to 120,000. We should have done an even spread, not a minimum only. So a reminder that you should always check the spread method before you tab out. So let's do this one again. And the budget margin gets recalculated in the cube as I'm updating the sales and the cost. So does my grand total for that division. We can keep working with our key customers in the sales team to set up the budget. As with the GL budget, when we'll rename this, it's my customer item budget. When we're satisfied with this, we can write back to optional tables in Sage 300. It's my year 2021, and I want to write back to Information Manager. We can check that it's been updated in Sage 300. And we can also then refresh our data. Once we've refreshed our data, we can see our budget quantity, sales and cost by customer. And as we start selling and processing the actuals, this cube will also show us the actual versus the budget by item and customer. So behind the scenes, 2 important things to know with Writeback. The first one is that you have the option to lock the Writeback, so only users who know the password can actually perform the Writeback. And you can also lock the Writeback query. So some users can have access to a specific cube with a specific Writeback query. They're allowed to do that particular update by, for example, customer and item as part of the sales team, but they may not be able to change the Writeback query to update the GL. And the actual query that is run when you do the Writeback is configured in here. So here we're writing the query to update the quantity, the cost, and the sales. So we're not going to show you how this query works at this point in time. But if you have any specific questions, or if you need to update, for example, doing a calculation, so we just push the cells, enter this budget cells in the cube, but you want the cost to be 50% of the sales figure, we could amend the budget cost writeback query to be budget cells times 50% or times a parameter that you can update. We've looked at how Info-Explorer Writeback can help build sales targets for a new division. We can spread evenly by month even when we don't have price sales, do some adjustments over the various months of our budget, and we can also set up, using Information Manager optional tables, budgets by customer and item, which support the total sales numbers. At the end of this process, we have uploaded our budget in General Ledger Budget Set 1. This is the budget that's approved for the year and that will not change over the course of 2021. So we can run some reports out of GL Financial Report or using Info-Explorer cubes to compare our actuals and our budgets. As the year progresses, we might find that we need to update our forecast. So now we're going to look at the next step of our budgeting process, which is how to manage the ongoing forecast using Info-Explorer Writeback. So our scenario is that our budget 1 is unchanged. To maintain the compliance been approved by the board, it doesn't change. But when we want to revise our forecast at the end of Q1, we're going to use budget set 2. And budget set 2 is going to be made up of actuals up to the end of Q1, and then we're going to update the budget for Q2 to Q4. So to do this, we're going to look at some additional spread methods that we haven't looked at yet, and we're again going to write back to Sage for our budget set 2. We are now at the end of Q1 2021, and we can use Info-Explorer to compare our budget 1 and our actuals. We can see that we are under budget at the moment, minus 15%, as highlighted in the cube for Q1. We can drill down into our revenue and cost and look at other reports to do some further analysis. But what we're going to focus on in this presentation is how to update our forecast using budget set 2 in the general ledger. We don't want to update budget 1 because that's the one that's been approved by the board and can't be changed. However, we can do our ongoing quarterly forecast, and the same principle would apply to do a monthly forecast. So the first thing we're going to do is copy budget 1 into budget 2. We go to the Workset tab, create a new workset, and rename it we're going to do a proportional spread matching everything except the version. So the numbers we're going to enter for budget set 2 will be allocated proportionately to budget set 1, and we also need to do fiscal set designator 1. So here I'm going to type in the grand total. We've now got budget 2 equal budget set 1. And the next step we need to do is set the Q1 budget 2 to be the same as the Q1 actuals, because our Q1 is finished, we can't change that. We're going to update this Q1 total and check our spread. Now we're going to do our spread based on actual and fiscal designator A. So here, instead of 3.4 million, I'm going to have 2877013.65. Budget to Q1 is the same as actual for Q1. And if I collapse this, I can see that if I don't change my forecast for the rest of the year, even if I meet my budget for the next 3 quarters, I will be below my budget by that amount. So I can come here and work on my Q2, Q3, Q4, see by how much do I need to update my budget. And I can use some of the spread methods we've used before, like percentage increase. So for example, I know we've had a slow start of the year, but we have some big sales currently being negotiated, almost closed for Q2 and Q3. So I can do a percentage increase for this one. Let's say 3% for Q2. And let's do 5% for Q3 and 10% for Q4. So with these assumptions, plus 3%, plus 5%, and plus 10%, I will meet my budget. Actually, I'll be over my approved budget. So let's say I'm happy with these numbers. I can then write that back to Sage 300 budget set 2. So again, that's assuming I have the right security rights. And now this time I'm going to update budget set 2. So what controls the write back is a query in the cube. We have the query here to read the data, and we have the query here to update the GL value. So there are some fail-safe mechanisms in this query to make sure you don't update your actuals. It only updates if you have changed any details in the cube. And as mentioned previously, you have an option to actually lock the write-back cube and the write-back query itself to make sure that only certain users with the appropriate passwords can actually update the data. You would also lock the connections to make sure that you can't accidentally change which database you're actually updating if you have multiple databases. And depending on our process, we can do the same thing using the optional tables and the GL and the budget by customer and item that we looked at before. And at the end of Q2, we can do the same thing. We might keep using budget set 2 because that's the rolling forecast. So we're going to push the actual for Q2 into budget set 2 and then do our revision of Q3 and Q4. But if we want to, or if we need to, we can also update budget set 3, 4, or 5. So we've seen how a sample company selling office supplies is using Sage 300 and Info-Explorer Writeback to manage its budgeting process. The finance manager prepares next year's budget using top-down analysis based on last year's actual. They can prepare this budget scenario and use Info-Explorer powerful spread method to start with some high-level updates for next year and then distribute to each division. Each division manager can update their budget depending on the role that the division plays in the overall strategic direction of the company. So the question mark division, where the products are getting towards the end of their life cycle, focuses on reducing costs, while the new division has some sales objective spread equally by month and supported by customer and item budget details. At the end of Q1 2021, we can revise the forecast. The budget 1 as approved by the board is unchanged, and we use budget 2 to add are actual where they're completed with the new budget. So the benefits of using Info-Explorer Writeback is you can analyze your actual versus budget because everything is stored in Sage 300. You have a choice of powerful spreading methods that you can select based on specific requirements of your division. It supports your flexible budget cycle and your rolling forecast. You can write back to Sage 300 to make sure that your budgets and your actuals are in the same place. They get backed up. When you upgrade, it upgrades at the same time. And it's particularly well suited for top-down budgeting. When using bottom-up budgeting, where divisions start with a blank sheet, using optional tables and the Excel add-in is a great solution because you can use the power of Excel for your backup calculations, and there is a separate video to present the optional tables and Excel add-in solutions. Additionally, you might consider using Process Scheduler to refresh the cubes and Report Runner to send some FR reports to the divisions. Info-Explorer fits into our collaboration and business intelligence product category. Optional tables, because it allows you to store some data not typically stored in Sage 300, fits into the tailoring and integration category. Process Scheduler and Report Runner will help with the automation and productivity improvements of the business. Thank you for your time, and for more information on Info-Explorer and other Orchid products, please go to our website www.orchid.systems. And the Writeback cubes that we looked at are available to download on the website, but you do need an Info-Explorer Writeback license to use the Worksets tab.